Hello, and welcome to our session for the 2020 Michigan Department of Education Special Populations Ed Camp. This session is called How to Best Serve Youth Transitioning from Foster Care to Post-High School Opportunities. I am Ann Rossi, and I am going to be both a presenter today and your moderator. The population we'll be talking about today is specifically youth who are in the foster care system and are in high school, predominantly later high school, so juniors and seniors. So what we'll be covering today, first we're going to go through and we're going to do some really quick introductions just so you know who's going to be chatting with you today. And then we'll talk a little bit about some older youth policies and meetings that are required for our older youth in foster care through MDHHS. Then we'll go into some specific resources, Fostering Future Scholarship, Tuition Incentive Program, the Education Training Voucher. We'll talk about the Michigan Student Portal, and then we'll finish up with talking about the resources that are available through the Fostering Success Michigan. So just to get us started, my name is Ann Rossi. Again, I'm with the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. I'm the Education Analyst. Our unit does education and youth services. So we do policy and programming statewide in the areas of education and older youth for older youth that are in our foster care system. So I will be talking mainly about those policies through MDHHS. And I think we'll go in order that we're going to be talking today. So Charles, if you want to introduce yourself.
Alrighty, my name is Charles Rozier, and I am an outreach representative with the Michigan Department of Treasury, Michigan Student Aid, and I am also the program coordinator for the Fostering Future Scholarship and the My Garrett program. And today I'll be providing a little bit more information in regards to the Fostering Future Scholarship, as well as the Tuition Incentive Program and how to go about accessing those scholarships. And next, I'll hand it over to Tanya.
Hi, I'm Tanya Mackey. I am with Samaritas, which is a child welfare organization here in Michigan. And I am the coordinator for the ETV program, also known as the Education and Training Voucher Program. I will be going through what exactly our program is and how to assist students in applying for it, and then be available with my contact information for any questions you have outside of our presentation today. And I'll hand it over to Carrie.
Thanks, Tanya. I am Carrie Ward. I'm Director of Fostering Success Michigan, which is a statewide initiative focused specifically on getting youth with experience in foster care to and through college. So my goal today for the presentation is to kind of tie together all of the resources that you're provided and give you some easy tools to navigate those and access those at later times. Thank you.
All right, so we will go ahead and get started with the DHHS piece. I guess just a quick note before we get started, for people that maybe aren't too aware of the foster care system and what that really means for a youth to be in foster care, is to say that we are talking about young people who are under the care and supervision of DHHS, Department of Health and Human Services, and they've entered foster care due to some kind of alleged or substantiated, abuse or neglect from their caregivers. So you have youth that come into foster care and they may be at a variety of places during a case of foster care. They may be working towards reunifying with bio-parent. They may be kind of going the other way and working towards an adoption if their biological parents' rights have been terminated. They may be going towards adoption or guardianship. Or unfortunately, we have some youth that don't do any of those. They aren't reunified, they don't get adopted. So they're going to move towards leaving care at some point as young adults, maybe without those supports that a lot of us had as we were leaving care. And that's why the resources that we're talking about today, the policies and meetings that we're talking about, and the work that we're doing with this population of kids is so important because of those youth that aren't having that permanency of adoption or going home. They aren't maybe going to have the supports that many of us had when we were leaving high school and going on to college or other possibilities after our high school career. So that's why, just to keep it in your head, that is why this kind of session and these kind of resources are so important for this population of kids. So within the foster care experience, I always want to point out when we're talking to educators, I think there's always a lot of miscommunication between the education system and the child welfare system. And I think it stems from us not always just knowing what kind of the other person does. And so the child welfare system, we always say, is mainly focused on safety and permanency and not so much education. So we want our kids in foster care to do well in education. But our goal is safety, permanency at home. So sometimes the education piece gets a little missed. And so that's where sometimes I think the frustration with educators comes in, because we just don't know the education world. We don't speak the same language. Things to remember when you're working with this population of youth is our youth have had many home moves, which often has led to many school moves. And predominantly with this older youth population, you could have an 18-year-old that you think should be at one point, and unfortunately they've been to 6 different high schools, so they're not at the point you think they should be at. They're falling behind significantly in their academic lives. Our youth have a lot of trauma, both trauma from before they came into care and the abuse, neglect that they possibly suffered prior to entering care, but then the trauma of being put in care and then possibly being moved from one home to another. Remembering that our youth don't always come from families that have a high emphasis on education or post-secondary education, and don't maybe have supports that know how to navigate the college process. As we'll talk about even today with all the different resources, it's complicated to navigate all these resources. And if you don't have somebody at home that's helping you do that, it can really affect our youth. And a lot of our youth maybe then just give up and say, well, it's not worth kind of the hassle of having to navigate the system. I wanted to mention our family team meetings. So family team meetings are basically case conferences. So these are policy required meetings for all of our kids in foster care. This is not just our older youth, but family team meetings are DHHS's structured approach to bringing the team together that's surrounding a family, including foster parents, biological parents, other caregivers, school staff, anybody that the family is feeling as a support, to look at the strengths, the needs, the goal setting as a case moves from the beginning of a foster care case to the end, however that case is going to end. So you often will hear from a foster care worker that we are having an FTM, we're having a placement FTM, or a semi-annual FTM. These are meetings that you can be asked to be invited to. These happen at, and on this slide it does bullet out all the times that are absolutely required to have these meetings during the course of a case. So really anytime anything's happening regarding placement, kids coming into care, kids moving from one home to another, cases getting closed, you're having these meetings to make sure that everybody's on the same page as this big thing in this case is happening. But anytime a youth can request, or a family or a youth can request an FTM. And I would say you as school staff could ask a caseworker to have an FTM. A good example may be getting close to graduation. You're halfway through the senior year, you want to make sure everybody's on the same page as far as what this youth is expecting to do after graduation. Is somebody helping them with the college applications and FAFSA? So you can request that FTM to have that, to discuss that piece of it. But what I wanted to point especially out regarding the FTMs are the two for the population we're talking about today, our older youth, the semi-annual transition meeting and the 90-day discharge meeting. So one of your handout that should be with this session. It should be called 901. And so that's a form that goes with the semi-annual transition meeting. So this is required to be held with every youth in care starting at the age of 14. Twice a year, they need to have a semi-annual transition family team meeting to discuss all these things that are on this slide. You will find that if you look at that handout, it's a lengthy handout. I believe it's 15 pages. So we are looking at all of these areas and really delving into what we need to work on with this young person in the areas of budgeting, in the areas of, do you know how to budget? Do you know how to write a check? Do you have a savings account? This is because we do know that some of our youth are going to leave care without that permanency that I talked about. So a youth that maybe is going home to bio parents, yes, your bio parents are the people that are doing most of this for our kids, right? But if we have a kid that's not going home to bio parents, that's not getting adopted, who's helping them with all of these things? So they're turning 18, 19, 20 years old, and they still need to have all these skills, but don't have anybody teaching them this. So the semi-annual is really meant to build on each one as you have it. So when, for example, transportation, maybe you have a kid that wants to get their driver's license and then eventually get a car. So at one transitional meeting, you're going to say, okay, who is helping this student with getting into driver's training? Who's going to help paying with this or setting up that payment? Who's going to drive them to class? Who's going to help them get their hours? And then what dates are these going to be done? So you're putting this in the semi-annual transition meeting to say specifically, we are leaving this meeting and these are the things that all of us as the team are going to do to help this youth in these next 6 months. And then we come back and say where we're at. Education could be, it's separated into freshman and sophomore, junior and senior. When are you taking the ACTs? Who's helping them get set up for the ACTs? And going into all of those areas. And then the 90-day discharge, pretty self-explanatory. That's approximately 90 days before a youth is closing, their foster care case is closing. You're going to have a meeting in hopes of, you've had all these transition meetings for the last maybe 2 years or however long they were in care. And now we're just looking at, we've done all these things as a team. What are we kind of finishing up before this youth actually leaves care? Both of these meetings should include anybody that the youth considers to be a support, and they should be able to be on the team for those semi-annuals in 90 days. It could be a boyfriend, significant other, it could be a teacher, a foster care liaison from this school. Really, we should be allowing our youth to identify who they want on that team. I want to just touch very briefly on our young adult voluntary foster care. I never want to do a session like this where we're talking about older youth services without at least quickly mentioning it, even if we're not going really talking a whole lot about it, because it won't be probably a lot of youth that are still in the K-12 system. But there's a big misconception still that as a youth in foster care, that a youth turns 18 and their case closes and that's it, and there's no more services and there's no more ability to be in the foster care system, and that's really not the case. And our youth in Michigan can specifically stay in our voluntary foster care system until the age of 21 or the 21st birthday. They do need to be working or doing something with their time, volunteering in school. And then they will receive a monthly stipend, and it's still a regular foster care case. They're receiving a stipend rather than a foster parent receiving funding. But they have a caseworker, they have a foster care caseworker, they're receiving all of the other services. They're having those same FTMs, those same semi-annual FTMs that any youth in care would have. We would still call that a foster care case. But again, a lot of times that's going to be, our youth are going to be past the K-12 system when they're entering LIVAC. Our MDHHS education planners specifically work to improve education outcomes for youth who are in foster care by specifically working with our older youth. So typically their job description, and they are mainly working with youth who are ages 14 and up and have an open foster care case. They do a lot of work working with school district foster care liaisons. So they would be, as a foster care liaison, an ed planner in your county could be a really a first go-to person for you if you're trying to figure out maybe the status of a case, who a caseworker is, any information you're trying to find out about a situation or a foster care or situation for a student in your school. They do a lot of looking at best interest determinations when we have kids that move homes and we're looking at where a kid should go to school. And then helping with transportation if we do keep a kid in their school of origin. Helping with registration, record transfer. They do a lot of advocacy within special education. They provide technical assistance to both child welfare and educators. So like I said, they can be a good person if you just have general questions about foster care, about what DHHS does or what our private agencies do. They're really good first go-to people for you as educators to reach out to. And there is a list in the handouts of who your current education planners are. The other go-to reason, the other really good reason you would go to them is for what we're talking about today and the resources you're going to hear about today in a minute. ETV, Fostering Futures, they're very knowledgeable on that, and they're very knowledgeable about how to make sure all those college funding sources work together. Again, like I said, it's very financial aid and all of these different resources can be very complicated and confusing. And ed planners, once they're trained and they're used to it, they know exactly what somebody's eligible for and what money goes where. So they're really good people that you can reach out for that as well. There are currently, we have 18 education planners that work in 48 counties. And again, you do have, you should have that most recent list within the handouts for this session. So the final thing I wanted to touch on today is an actual funding source. So the next few things you're going to hear from the other presenters are college financial resources and money. We want to know where the money is, right? And so I wanted to finish up with a funding source that is through our county DHHS offices. It isn't for college. This is not a funding source that can be used for college, but it can be used for pre-college expenses. But this is our YIT, our Youth in Transition. This is federal money called Chafee money that is specifically used for youth who are ages 14 to 23. And is to go to goods and services to help our youth in foster care with moving towards self-sufficiency. So the list on this slide is not an exhaustive list. If we can say this purchase or this service or this item is going to help this youth in some way with moving towards self-sufficiency or some kind of independent living skill, it would fall under our Youth in Transition funding. So YIT is allocated to states, and then our office allocates those down to county DHHS offices, and then those counties manage their own allocation. So there isn't a general maximum amount that a youth can use, but if you're looking at maybe if you have a youth that has an open foster care case and needs one of these things, these pre-college expenses paid for, you want to talk to the caseworker. If you know who that planner is or the caseworker, you want to get in touch with somebody at the county level. This also isn't an exhaustive list. One thing I know is not on this list is extracurricular activities. So you have a youth that's in a club or in a sport and needs something to participate in that. That could be used for YIT as well. But your ACT testing, summer school or credit recovery, we do pay for some tutoring out of this resource, books, or any kind of special calculators or anything a student would need for specialized classes they're taking pre-college. Educational field trips, senior expenses, so graduation expenses, yearbook expenses, and then up to a whopping $100 for prom expenses. We know that's not a lot, but we have not been given the okay to move that from $100. But again, not an exhaustive list. So if you have something else, if we can fit it under that, this will help a youth move towards independence or somehow learn a skill of independence or self-sufficiency, then we would be able to fit that under that YIT expenses. So that is all I have for today. I'm actually going to pass it now on to Charles, and he will start talking about My Student Aid.
Talk about a couple of state aid programs that are available for youth in care. Alrighty, so the Foster Future Scholarship is a scholarship that is provided by the state of Michigan that is available to students who have been in foster care on or after the age of 13. Now, the slide doesn't state it, but unfortunately, they do need to be in foster care due to abuse or neglect in order to be eligible for the Foster and Future Scholarship. There is a special application. That application opens up March 15th of each academic year, and students do need to complete that application annually if they are awarded the scholarship. The application is actually available in a couple of places. You could either access our My SSG student portal. Once a student signs up, they can access the application within that portal, and it is also available on our website. The deadline for that application is going to be June 30th of each year. Now, for graduates from the class of 2020, they do have until September 1, 2020 in order to get their application completed due to COVID-19. But generally from year to year, that application period is open from March 15th until June 30th. And the maximum award for this program is $3,000 per academic year, $1,500 per semester, with $1,000 being dedicated to tuition and fees, books and supplies, and $500 towards room and board. Alrighty, next I'm going to talk about the tuition incentive program. Now, this scholarship isn't available just for foster youth, but this is a program that many foster youth will most likely be eligible for. So this program is available to students who've had Medicaid, which is healthcare provided by the state of Michigan, for at least 24 months or 2 years within a 36 consecutive month time frame. And that does have to happen between age 9 and high school graduation. And they'll have to be identified by the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. So DHHS actually sends over those records to our office, and then we can get those applications locked in once the student becomes eligible. So there is a special application that only needs to be completed one time. The deadline for the application is August 31 of the graduating year. So for our class of 2020 graduates in particular, due to COVID-19, their deadline has been extended to August 31 of next year. So they'll have until August 31st of 2021. But for generally speaking, students have until August 31st of their senior year or of their graduating year. And also, students must complete the application, or actually must complete high school graduation prior to age 20. Now, if a student is attending a early or middle college, they do actually have until age 21 in order to graduate from high school, but they would need to contact our office directly in order to be able to complete the application. Now, all students must begin utilizing the TIP scholarship within 4 years after graduating from high school in order to access the scholarship. After 4 years, if they have not enrolled in a college, then their eligibility is automatically forfeited. And then students also have a total of 6 years in order to utilize all of their eligibility for the program. So again, 6 years from high school graduation in order to take advantage of TIP. And next, I'll talk about how TIP works. So TIP does works in 2 phases. First, we're going to discuss phase 1. Phase 1 provides $250 in mandatory fees per semester, and the coverage of tuition will differ depending on the type of institution a student is planning to attend. So if a student is looking at attending one of our Michigan community colleges, the TIP program covers the cost of tuition at the standard in-district rate. If a student is looking at attending one of the private colleges here in Michigan, TIP pays out at $113 per credit hour. And then for our 4-year public universities here in Michigan that is eligible for phase 1, that is going to pay out at the lower level resident rate at those participating schools. Students must be enrolled in a certificate or an associate degree program in order to be able to access phase 1 TIP. And they must also be taking classes within that program of study in order for TIP to cover the tuition costs. A certification program must also be a minimum of 1 academic year in order to be eligible for the tuition incentive program. We do consider that to be 30 weeks of instructional time. And next, we're going to talk about phase 2. So phase 2 is really simple. It pretty much provides $500 per semester or up to $400 per term for a total of $2,000 for credits earned at a 4-year degree granting college or university here in the state of Michigan. Now, just to make you all aware, there's pretty much only 4 colleges that actually do offer phase 1 TIP. That is going to be Michigan Tech, Fair State, Lake Superior State, and Northern Michigan University. And then pretty much all of your Michigan public colleges will accept phase 2. And phase 2 must be completed within 30 months or 2.5 years of completion of phase 1 requirements. Alrighty, so again, we're going to go talk about the application process. Is going to be accessible in one of 2 ways. Students can again go to our website and create a My SSG student portal account. That website is michigan.gov/MISSG, or they can also call our customer care center and we'll be happy to complete their application right over the phone on their behalf. That number is 1-888-447-2687. So again, just to reiterate, students must complete that application by August 31 of their senior year in high school. And for the class of 2020 graduates in particular, they will have until August 31st of 2021 in order to get their applications completed for the tuition incentive program. And all students must graduate from high school before age 20 unless enrolled in an early or middle college. Alrighty, so next I just want to briefly touch base on what are the eligibility requirements for all of our state financial aid programs. So in order for a student to receive TIP or the Fostering Future Scholarship, they must have Michigan residency. They must be either a U.S. citizen, have permanent residency status, or be an approved refugee. All students must also complete the free application for federal student aid, and that must be completed every year. All of our programs must be utilized at an approved Michigan college or university. So TIP or the Fostering Future Scholarship cannot be utilized at any school outside of the state of Michigan. All students must be enrolled at least half time. So for the primary academic year, fall and spring semester, that's going to be enrolled in at least 6 credit hours. And for the summertime, that's going to be a minimum of 3 credit hours. And then again, all students must graduate with their high school diploma or its recognized equivalent. And once a student begins to receive our state financial aid, they must also maintain what is called satisfactory academic progress. And that policy is going to be set by the institution that they are attending. And I do want to briefly talk about the FAFSA deadline. So we do have a couple of programs that we provide known as the Michigan Competitive Scholarship, which is a 1,200 or higher on the SAT, and the Michigan Tuition Grant, which does not have a merit threshold, but students must demonstrate financial need and be planning to attend a private college for those programs. There is a deadline of March 1st, so a student would need to get that FAFSA completed by March 1st in order to be considered for those programs. But for all of our other state programs, so for the tuition incentive program, as well as for the Foster and Future Scholarship, as long as the student files a current year FAFSA, they are okay. So it doesn't have any deadline in association with the FAFSA for our other state programs. We do like to inform students the FAFSA college order does matter. So we assume whatever college the student lists first on their FAFSA, that is the college that they plan to attend. So they can update their FAFSA college order by just logging into their FAFSA and changing that around, or they can also create the MySSG student portal and select change institution for the appropriate academic year. So within the MySSG student portal account, students can also update the college they plan on attending and where they would like their scholarship to be sent to. Or students can lastly call our customer care center. Again, that number is 1-888-447-2687, and they are available Monday through Friday from 8 to 5 p.m. And then lastly, we're going to talk about the MySSG student portal. So we do encourage all students to create a MySSG student portal, which is going to be available on our website at michigan.gov/MySSG. In order for a student to have the ability to create an account, they will need their social security number, as well as either have a current FAFSA on file already or have a tip record, meaning that they are eligible for TIP. They might not have completed their application, but there's already a record in our system that we received over from DHHS. And then very lastly, I want to speak to what is available within the MySSG student portal. So if you want to just go over to that last slide, what can students do in MySSG? So they can access the applications for the Children of Veterans Tuition Grant, the Foster and Future Scholarship, most importantly, the Survivors Tuition Grant, and the application to the Tuition Incentive Program. So those applications are available in the portal, and we highly recommend students access those through our portal system. They can also update the college, as we spoke to already. They can update their contact information. They can actually view eligibility status for a program. So if they're not sure if they're eligible, they can log in or create an account and see any state aid program they may be eligible for. And more importantly, they can also view payment status. So sometimes we have issues where students will say, you know, I was awarded the Foster and Future Scholarship, but my college is telling me they still haven't received it or anything of that nature. They can actually see when the state of Michigan pays the college and when that is processed. And then they can also lastly just contact our office directly. If they need to email us or reach us, they can do that through the student portal. So we highly recommend students sign up for that. But that is pretty much the state of Michigan programs that are most applicable to the foster youth. And with that, I am going to pass it over to Tanya.
Thank you, Charles. Again, my name is Tanya Mackey, and I am with Samaritas and the ETV program. So I will, if we go to the next slide, we can get into a little bit about what our program is. So what exactly is ETV? So ETV stands for Education and Training Voucher. So this is both federal and state funding to assist youth who have experienced some time in foster care. The funding can be used for both secondary educational schools, post-secondary educational schools like your community colleges and universities, and it can also be used for some vocational programs as long as they are an accredited institution at least a year long. So we also have students who receive funding from us that are attending schools, to receive cosmetology license and things of that nature. Our funding comes from Chafee funding, and you may have just heard that word when Anne was giving her presentation. So it's basically the same pot of funding as the Youth in Transition Fund. So those are the funds Anne was speaking to in regards to the prom and senior expenses and things like that. And what's very neat with this funding is ETV and YIT can be used at the very same time. So you can use it concurrently with the exception of educational expenses. So educational expenses, students again would come to ETV for college age students, that is, and then YIT funding they would use for all those other expenses. So it's very neat that you don't often see funding sources that you can use at the same time. So who exactly is eligible for ETV? So to be eligible for ETV would have to have been youth who were in foster care due to abuse and neglect on or after the age of 14. Now this does include unaccompanied refugee minors supervised by the Department of Health and Human Services and some juvenile justice youth as well. So if you've heard of some of those students in your school, definitely contact us to see if maybe they would fall under this umbrella as well. So again, in care on or after the age of 14. The next eligibility criteria, which is pretty important, is if they were placed into a guardianship or adopted. So if that guardianship took place or an adoption at age 14 or 15, they would not be eligible for our program. So if adopted or in guardianship, that would need to occur on or after the age of 16. Some other eligibility requirements is they do have to have their high school diploma or their GED to be eligible for our program. So we can't award dual enrolled students, attend an accredited institution. So a community college, a university, a private school, again, a training program like I just mentioned. And they have to receive their first ETV by their 21st birthday. So if you're working with students that are, in their senior year and going to graduate, at least give them information so they know school might not be for them right away, but they do have to access it by age 21. However, when that happens, they can continue to receive it up until age 26 for a maximum of 5 years. So that's kind of helping students who are coming to school in a little late or may have started and came back. And then they do have to complete the FAFSA to be eligible for ETV. If you go to the next slide, how much does our program provide? So award amounts are determined each year, but the maximum award amount a student would receive for ETV is $5,000 for the fiscal year. Now that's split into 2 semesters. So say fall semester, a full-time student, which we consider full-time at 12 credits or more, would be considered and eligible for $2,500 for that semester. Now, if a student is taking below 12 credits, even down to a one class for, say 3 credits, they're still eligible for that part-time ETV. So they would just be eligible for half of that award amount, which would be $1,250 for that semester. So students may receive the funding 2 times during our fiscal year. So our program runs on the same fiscal year as the state of Michigan. So October 1st through September 30th, students can be awarded 2 times during that year. And then they will apply each semester. So next slide. When and how should you apply? So I do get this question quite a bit, especially from high school counselors working with seniors. So they do have to have their high school diploma or GED and be enrolled in school. So I typically tell students, counselors, workers, on or near graduation is a good time to submit the application. I'll kind of go over very briefly of a few of the documents that we would need. But once we have the application, we can start working with the students on our end. So for example, if you're having a student, senior year starting right now, the fall would be too early. Even Christmas time would be too early. So start working with them on those applications on or near graduation. So late spring, April, even March, April, May. And then once we have that application, we can kind of get the ball rolling on our end. We know once they're graduated and have received their diploma, you might not be working with them as much. And especially for students who may have closed cases where they don't have a worker to assist them with the pending documents that we would need in that summertime prior to their freshman year, our workers can contact those students and help collect those documents. So it's a very confusing time. It's a very stressful time getting everything around college. So we can kind of assist them in that aspect too. So on or near graduation is the perfect time. There are 2 ways to apply for our program. We have a paper application, which students can fill out, scan, take pictures, email to us. And we also have an online application in which they will fill out online and receive an email from us in terms of what else we'll need to complete their application. So the application process is very simple. First and foremost, Charles would talk to a smidge about the FAFSA, but we know that's the first and foremost most important thing a student can do when they're entering their college career. I did want to just briefly talk. I know sometimes child welfare forms and education forms use a lot of acronyms, but the DHHS 945 is a form that can be filled out by a DHHS worker for students to file as an independent status. So that means when they complete their FAFSA, which is obviously everyone knows is as early as October 1st, and that information gets sent to the school is going to want to verify that they are filing as independent. So when they check that box that they were in care under after age 13, they can then bypass bio parent information and file as independent. So this form is something that can be filled out by DHHS worker, and the student can give to the higher ed institution to verify that. Again, they need to receive their high school diploma or GED and be enrolled in their college semester. To receive an application, the application, both paper form and our online version, can be found on our website, which is listed at mietv.samaritas.org. You should be receiving a handout along with this presentation with our paper application as well. You can always contact our office and we can direct you to our website, and we can also email you a paper version if you prefer that way. So you can submit those to us whichever way works for you and your students. The applications can be mailed to our office, even during our offices are closed during this time of COVID. However, we still are able to access our mail and our fax machine. You can always email anything to us, which is the easiest. And again, the online application is probably the easiest form. So just very quickly, on the next slide, we'll talk about the paper application. It's a very, very simple 4-page application, again, which you all have received. And then along with the application is this is the cover sheet, just a checklist of those other documents that we'll need. So you can kind of work along with your student, like, you may not have your schedule yet because you're not going to attend orientation until this summer, but you'll need to submit this to the ETV office once you have it, things like that. But it's a 4-page, very simple application to fill out and submit to our office. And again, just to reiterate, you can fill out that 4-page application in the springtime with your student, submit them to your office, and we'd be happy to take over from there. The next process is our online application form. I did not go through our online application form as it could be tedious. However, I just want to show what our cover page looks like. So when you get to our website, before you can begin the application process, you will need to register as a new student. So they'll register for the new student and then be able to log right back in and complete and submit an application. Now, once they submit their application, they will receive an email letting them know, welcome to the program. We're verifying that you are indeed eligible for this program, and this is what we will still need. At that time, they'll be assigned a worker on our end to really help smoothly and navigate that process for them. Okay, this is just quickly, I wanted to, just so you can kind of see the additional documents that we need. So again, the 4-page application or the online application is very simple. It's mainly just talking about demographic information, school information, some college career goals, and then just these few other documents is all we need really to award a student that $5,000 for the year. And when I talk about that $5,000, this is above and beyond their financial aid package that they are receiving from filling out the FAFSA or from other scholarships and grants they're receiving. So this is completely above and beyond that package. We will need a copy of their high school diploma or their GED, their college class schedules. So for high school seniors, we'll need, their summer college schedule or that fall. Their account summary. So this is stuff that they're not going to receive until later in the summer. But we look at their tuition balance. That's how we determine how we process funding for that student. We do need to see what they are receiving in financial aid. And then we just need an acceptance letter for that school if it's their first semester. So as your students are starting to receive them acceptance letters this spring, tell them to make sure they hang on to them. And then just some supporting budget documentation on how they're thinking about using that funding for their upcoming semester. So that's really our application process. It's very simple. And like I said, we are happy to navigate that with them and help them make it as seamless as possible. So I talked about our funding and how much it is, but just real quickly, I wanted to talk about exactly how it is distributed. So funds are only available during that term. So once a semester is ended, they're no longer eligible for funding for that term. With that being said, students can be awarded any time during that semester. So especially for our students that are reapplying, they can apply for their fall semester anytime, from now up until, the last day of classes in November or December. So it's really nice that, especially for our older students that might forget to reapply each semester, something like that, there is not quite a cut-off window, just anytime during their semester. And the way we distribute it is we look at that account summary. So if students owe a tuition balance to the school for that semester, we do pay that directly to the institution. But any funding above and beyond that, which especially in the state of Michigan, we're so lucky to have so many resources for students who have experienced time in care, and so many schools have also supplied scholarships for these students, as well as the resources that Charles spoke about, that a lot of our students truly don't owe a balance. So they can use that remaining funding for their everyday expenses. So for their educational expenses, this can be expenses that include housing, daily living expenses, their groceries, their food, their cell phone bills, just to name a few. I think if we go to the next slide, I have a not quite an exhaustive list, but just a few things that they could use it for. Of course, all their school books and supplies, we know that can be extremely expensive. A computer and accessories, transportation costs, whether that be a vehicle or bus tickets and things like that, of that nature, gas, of course. Furniture expenses, dorm supplies. So especially for our freshmen, I'm seeing a lot of refrigerators and things like that. So those are just a few items that our students can use for their educational expenses. When we go to the next slide, it just talks about a few things that we cannot use it for. So any kind of entertainment costs and concert tickets, which unfortunately we can't go to at this moment, movie tickets and things like that, courts, fines, fees, anything like that, are just a few things that they can't use it for. So truly anything that's assisting a student obtain their educational goals are typically an ETV approved expense. Now, how do we know that? Because students need to save their receipts. So in order for students, if we're not sending the funding to the school, because their balance has been taken care of and they're receiving that funding for their educational expenses, we do require them to submit receipts before they're eligible to reapply again for their following semesters. So if we go to the next one. So to reapply for ETV, again, students may reapply each semester for our program up to 2 times per that fiscal year. Just to talk again, they can receive it up until their 26th birthday for a maximum of 5 years, whichever is first. And they must maintain the eligibility requirements. So what are our eligibility requirements? We do require our students maintain a 2.0 cumulative overall GPA. We also look that they do not withdraw or have an incomplete in more than 1 class. So if things get tough for a student in their first semester, they are allowed to withdraw or drop 1 class without it affecting their future funding. Not only do we award our students, but I did mention when we receive applications, we will reach out to them. We have 2 case managers for our program that assist students right now over the phone or via Zoom and video chat, and hopefully we'll get back to one day meeting our students in person and really going over the application with them, explaining to them how to reapply each semester, assisting them with collecting those missing documents. And that's really important for our incoming freshmen or the students that you would be assisting. So they can help them collect and navigate those additional documents over the summertime to get them awarded and ready for their fall semester. They can help connect them with campus resources as they are knowledgeable in a lot of the campuses around the state of Michigan and what campus champions that they have. And they can also give them information about additional scholarships and grants that they might not have known about. Like the Fostering Future Scholarship, we have students that sometimes haven't applied for that yet. Just being that extra helping hand for them as they, are starting this new chapter in their life. We go to the next one. Some other services that our case managers provide is we can ongoing email and phone contact with our students regularly. We also can help connect them with mentors if they, which, some of our younger ETV students and our older, we can connect them as a mentor-mentee relationship to a system, especially if they're on the same campus and things like that. So in a nutshell and very quickly, that is our program. If we go to the next slide, my contact information is on here. Please contact us if you have any questions, especially about your incoming seniors, to help navigate the process. If you need help assisting them, connecting resources and things like that, we would be absolutely happy to do for you. So I thank you for your time today, and we look forward to hearing from you. Again, you can find us on Facebook as well. We like to update some of reminders and scholarship opportunities and things like that. So thanks again, everyone.
Hi, everyone. I am Carrie Ward, and I am with Fostering Success Michigan. I'm Director of Fostering Success Michigan. And I know that we've given you lots of information today. My goal is to really tie all of that together and give you some ideas about how to help your students get to college. So talk to you a little bit about the college resources that are available. And then also just to reassure you that all the things that we've talked about today, you don't necessarily have to know by heart. There are a plethora of resources on the Fostering Success Michigan website that have to do with all of the things that were discussed today. So in addition to the handouts that are available, just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. So 3 years from now, you'll be like, I think there was a website, fosteringsuccessmichigan.com, instead of searching for the various webinars or papers that you were looking for. So what is FSM? So FSM is a statewide initiative focused specifically on getting youth with experience in foster care to and through college. We do that in a multitude of ways, but we have three main tactics that we use. Number one is providing resources. So if you look in your handouts, you'll see a variety of different Fostering Success Michigan resources that are available by way of, there's a financial aid guide that talks specifically about the financial aid pieces that were previously presented on in one handy booklet. We also have a higher education guide, which kind of provides a summary of all of the campuses across the state of Michigan that have points of contact. We have a website, as I mentioned before, that has over 600 library resources available to you on various topics and focused on various populations. So you'll find within the website, there's focus on middle school, high school, and post-secondary students. So those are kind of some of our resources. We also provide networking opportunities for our FSM network participants to come together and share best practices and make those important connections for both students and professionals who are working with this population. We also provide support. So that's another important thing to keep in mind. So as we're moving forward, if you have a specific question about something to do with one of your students and you kind of don't know who to reach out to, always reach out to Fostering Success Michigan. And as kind of a hub of a network, we can kind of point you in the right direction. Next slide. So I wanted to share this visual just to kind of give you an idea of what we're doing in Michigan. So our focus is kind of to create a pipeline of support for students with experience in foster care from high school to college and into career. So we include in our network various partners. So as an example, the Michigan Department of Education is one of our very important partners, including Kathleen Haney and the multitude of foster care liaisons across the state. We are also partnered with the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. So Ann Rossi is very closely works with me often. Samaritas and Michigan Department of Treasury are also parts of our network. So again, if you think about all the various pieces and people that touch the lives of youth with experience in foster care in Michigan, we try to include all of those people within our network so that everybody can kind of be experts at their own thing. But if you have a question, we can connect you with the various experts. Next slide. So I just want to highlight some education outcomes. I know Ann talked a lot about youth who are in foster care in high school and some of the preparatory things happening before they graduate. I want to share one particular statistic with you that came out, I believe, in 2019. From the My School Data website, 40% of youth with experience in foster care in Michigan graduate from high school in a 4-year cohort compared to 80% of the general population. And if you visit the My School Data website, you'll also find that youth who are in foster care also lag behind in those graduation rates compared to all other special populations. Now that happens because of all of the various things that Ann talked about when she was originally talking. So talking about frequent school moves or changes of foster families, they all contribute to that lack of educational stability and poor performance and sometimes behavioral problems that occur with these students. So when you're thinking about college access and success, right, we also have to make sure that we're graduating them from high school first. So that's kind of just to orient you in the where we're at with students who are graduating from high school. Post-secondary outcomes. So what we know is that approximately 80% of youth who have experience in foster care expressed interest in going to college, but only about 20% get there, and only about 3 to 11% graduate. And so again, dismal, difficult statistics, but the good news is that we're moving forward as a state to support this population in all of these various outcomes for both college access and success. Next slide. So why do youth with experience in foster care struggle so much in post-secondary education? If you look at my list or my bullet points, you'll see that many of these particular issues also reflect some of the bullet points that Anne pointed out in the beginning when she was talking about the different meetings and different like family meetings and things like that, where you're focused on the different life domains or different parts of a young person's life. These things continue to resonate through high school graduation and into college. So again, young people with experience in foster care struggle with homelessness and food insecurity, underemployment and mental health issues. That lack of social and network connections is a very big deal. When you're thinking about a young person who is just going into that college environment and trying to adapt to that college environment, it's a tough thing. I mean, trying to figure out, where do I go to class? How do I get around? How do I deal with all of this financial aid paperwork? For a young person who's trying to navigate that on their own, it can be very overwhelming. Additionally, kind of layer on top of that the pandemic. So thinking about like those students who graduated, you know, in May, June, and then are moving forward to be on campuses this year, that's a tough thing. And so all of these different things impact a young person's success in college and their ability to persist. Transportation is often an issue, and also mentioned driver's licenses. So we're finding that many of our college students arrive on campus without a driver's license for all of those same reasons. Is, you know, you don't necessarily have somebody who's going to help you get your hours required for obtaining a driver's license or putting you on their insurance for their car. So these students are having difficulty getting to class and also having difficulty getting to their employment. The trauma piece is very important, similar to what Anne mentioned. And then also those life skills gaps. So thinking about trying to like buy books and manage money and manage you know, a refund from your financial aid, a huge refund, and trying to manage that over time as opposed to kind of like having money for the first time in your life and spending it all at once. So all of these things impact that post-secondary access and success piece for our youth with experience in foster care. Just to kind of layer on top of that, I do want to mention COVID-19 impact for our students. So if you look at the bullet points, you'll notice again that you see specific themes. What we realize is that COVID or the pandemic really made a difficult situation more complicated and worse for our students. And this is, you know, students who are graduating out of high school and also the students on campuses. So there was a national survey that went out, I believe through Foster Club, and it found that housing and food insecurity was a huge issue for our young people. 23% reported that they're being forced to move. So there was a lot of campus closures. And so I know that there was a lot of fear of having to move off campus and not having anywhere to go, or maybe returning to an unsafe situation. 1 in 5 students reported running out of food. There were multiple technological issues or online class issues. So a lot of times students struggled with having the resources such as laptops, Wi-Fi, and that sort of thing. But then they also really struggled with those skills that are required to do those online classes, and especially that abrupt shift from like everything's fine, we're going to class, to all of a sudden nothing's okay and we're stuck at home. That in itself was quite a trigger, like a trauma trigger for many of our students, and was very disruptive in their education. Multiple employment and financial issues. So nearly 65% who reported that they were working prior to the pandemic are no longer working, and many have reported difficulty in receiving both unemployment benefits and their stimulus payments. And then also there's that lack of support network piece again that we kind of keep coming back to, and that just 37% reported having family members to rely upon during the crisis, and 1 in 5 reported being entirely on their own. Now, I just kind of want to pause here for a second and talk about that lack of a support network piece, because what I know in working with many of my students who have graduated from high school and moved on to college was that teachers and educators, school counselors, foster care liaisons played a huge part in their success. And that for many of these students, that was the connection that they needed. So I would encourage you to reach out to the students who are attending your school to touch base with them on these various issues, but also about college and about their future dreams. A lot of times it's really hard for us to kind of think of that bigger picture when everything is kind of unknown. So, so that's kind of the takeaway for this slide. Next slide. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the resources in Michigan, specifically for students who have experienced foster care and are moving to college. So we have campus-based supports by way of either programs or champions, points of contact across the state of Michigan at various campuses, community colleges, four-year colleges that are available to students. Some of these programs are very big, robust programs with multiple employees and coaches and points of contact, maybe even designated space and activities. Some of the programs or some of the campuses may only have one point of contact if it's a smaller school. But the great thing is that these points of contact understand the difficulties that these students experience in acclimating to college and persisting. And they are the points of contact that you'll want to kind of point your students to as they transition from high school to college. So campus-based support programs offer on-site services such as coaching support, food and housing assistance, scholarships, and more to these students. So they can have coaching support, there are mentorship opportunities, peer community building, as I mentioned, sometimes activities specific to that population on campus. Connection to campus champions. So a lot of times on these campuses that offer these programs, there's a campus-wide understanding of the difficulties that these students face. So if they're struggling with financial aid or some sort of form, or the campus champion can point them to a direct person in a department on campus. Advocacy for students on campus, pre-college outreach and recruitment, and I'll talk more about that in a minute, and then financial resources. So you've heard a lot about financial resources that are available to students. Some of the campuses additionally offer like specific scholarships to students that attend their school. Next slide. This is kind of a snapshot of some of the campus-based support programs and institutions that are part of our network. So as of now, we have 30 campus support programs and champions across the state of Michigan. We also have approximately 64 financial aid champions in financial aid offices across the state of Michigan that know specifically about all of those financial aid pieces that you heard about before. So just to kind of have that in the back of your mind, that there are resources or resource partners at specific college campuses across the state of Michigan. Next slide. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about the resources that are available on the Fostering Success Michigan website, as I mentioned before. So this is our website. You can see on the toolbar, there's different age ranges, so middle school, high school, college. So you're able to sort resources by age. You can also use the search bar. So for example, if you want to know about ETV and you search for ETV, it would come up and talk to you about some of the things that Tanya highlighted, and then it would also have Tanya's contact information. So just know that you can always visit the FSM website for a variety of information. Next slide. This is an example of a specific resource that we have for educators. And I've also included in the handouts a guide that we have that's specific for educators as well. This is the online version. And I would encourage anybody to visit our website and check out this toolkit. But it kind of gives you an idea of different ways that educators and educational staff can support students in that high school to college journey. Next page. These are the guides that I mentioned before. Again, there's a variety of guides that we have available. Getting to know child welfare for educators is the one that I just spoke of. Getting to know youth and alumni of foster care gives you a highlight of the various obstacles that these youth face, and also provides great ways to support them. And then our financial aid guide and higher education resource guide will highlight all of the financial aid sources and the higher education campuses that offer programs all in one convenient spot. Next page. So pre-college support. So I've talked a little bit about this in the previous slide related to COVID, but really it's important, especially now during the pandemic, to start having conversations with your juniors and seniors and even sophomores about college. It's actually a great opportunity, especially if you're virtual, because a lot of the campus support programs are actually making connections virtually. And so if you can kind of start that conversation with a student and say, oh, you're interested in maybe going to Michigan State University. Well, you can reach out to Michigan State University and actually make a contact with the campus-based program there and maybe take the student on a virtual tour where prior to COVID, you might not be able to actually make that trip logistically. It's important that you bring the college conversation to the young person and work with them to find what they're interested in, and engage them in the pre-college preparation and support. So, even going through the Fostering Success Michigan website has a couple different, a college application toolkit and a financial aid toolkit that you could actually sit down with a student and just go through together. And that would engage the student and give them an opportunity to talk a little bit about college and find out exactly what it entails and all the different parts of that. Set up the expectation of success and knowing your resources. So I say that knowing that we've given you a lot of information today, but again, that information is available on the Fostering Success Michigan website in a really easy to find way. And then continue to plant the seed of continuing to pursue their goals, especially during this time, as I said before. Next slide. This is the college application toolkit that I mentioned before. This is super helpful, that just basically provide links and help students learn to fill out college applications, gives them suggestions and that sort of thing. We also have financial aid toolkits for both professionals and supportive adults. And I believe we also have a foster care liaison toolkit on our website too. Next page. I want to mention an upcoming event that we're having. We're going to have our very first FSM statewide virtual college fair on October 1st from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. This event is specifically for young people who are in foster care, and they'll be able to hear directly from coaches from campus-based support programs across the state and students who are currently attending those programs. This is going to be a really cool event, and it's a great way to get the conversation started. I did include a link for registration, and I believe the registration is live, but we'll be putting out more information about the event in September. Next page. I talked a little bit about ways to support students, action steps to support students within your community, within your school. Share your knowledge of the challenges of these students with your school administration. So as an example, I'm on a school board, and one of the first things that I did was approach the superintendent. And I said, how are we supporting our students in our district who are in foster care? I think it's a really important conversation to have, especially among or amidst COVID. I know that teachers are already kind of overwhelmed with all of the different things that they're needing to do, but making sure that those special populations or those students who are in foster care are still considered is super important. Also reach out to students to check in with them. Sometimes it's just that contact that they need, and that they need to be aware that somebody cares and somebody needs to know that they're all right, and to check in with them. Provide guidance and link them to resources, and then advocate for them. And then, as I said before, reach out to your campus-based support programs to inquire about virtual visits to start that conversation about college. Next slide. Also, look beyond the students' records to learn who your students are. So one of the earlier slides I had talked about, some of the students struggle with grades, struggle with behavioral issues. It's really important to look beyond that. We really believe that college is for everyone. And so it's never too early or late to start that conversation with your students. Partner with professionals and supportive adults to become a good system navigator. So that really is about partnering with Fostering Success Michigan, tying yourself into the network so you're able to ask questions and navigate resources with our help as you work with your students. And you will see our website listed there, and also our Google group that we have. So please feel free to join that. I'll pass it back to Anne, I believe, to close us out.
Hi. So thank you, guys. A lot of information, a lot of great information. I kind of was making some notes as we went through too, just to point out some things that I think are especially helpful when we talk about this population and kind of your head spinning of all the resources we just talked about. I mean, we just talked for over an hour about meetings and applications and receipts and college programs. And I think one of the biggest things to know is that you know us now, that you know to reach out to one of us, that there are resources for youth who are from foster care, whether it's the college resources or meetings happening, that there is a place for it. So if anything else, if you forget what Fostering Futures is or where to apply, that you know that Ann Rossi, Carrie Ward, or you know, that you can reach out to one of us and we will help you through that and help you navigate what's what. So the other thing is starting the conversation, I think, with young people is so important. I know a former colleague of ours, Maddie Day, used to always say, you don't say, when she worked with young people, you don't say when they're a freshman in high school, well, if you go to college. You say, well, when you go to college, or where are you going to college? Not you're never asking the if, you're just saying, okay, so when you go to college, where are you going to go? And if that doesn't mean it has to be U of M or MSU. It could be a vocational program. It could be a cosmetology program. So always thinking about those options too. I don't know that we went too far into kind of that conversation today of when we say college, we just mean something post high school. So that doesn't have to mean going to your big university. There's tons of options out there, but that we're always starting that conversation with, okay, you're getting something after high school. What is that going to be? And what is that going to look like? So I do believe we have a few minutes here. So I do have some questions that maybe I could go through and ask. And I think I'll go back and start with Charles, if he could maybe unmute himself, if he's still available. I wanted to ask about, I had a couple questions actually for you. One regarding, so with Fostering Futures, can a student use that for summer programs or summer classes?
So the Fostering Futures Scholarship is only applicable during the fall and spring semesters. So it is not going to be able to be utilized for the summertime.
Oh. Okay, and then I guess going back to TIP, and this is actually a question that I've gotten asked recently regarding filing when they're doing their FAFSA and their TIP and all of that. Does a student have to file the FAFSA prior to getting their TIP, their tuition incentive program set up?
No, so a student does not have to complete the FAFSA before being able to access the TIP application. The TIP application becomes available as soon as the students meet eligibility, which could be as early as 12 years old. So that is a myth. Students will need to have a current year FAFSA on file in order to receive their TIP, but they do not have to complete the application prior to completing their TIP application.
And I guess one more thing on that tuition incentive program, do they need to have their social security number available to them to finish their TIP program or TIP application?
So that is also false. Students do not need to have their social security number if they call our customer care center. which is 1-888-447-2687. They can complete their application right over the phone through our customer care center, and they will not need their social security number for that. If they would like to create a MySSG student portal account, the student will need to have their social security number for that.
Oh, well, thank you, because I get that question a lot. And with that social security number, I think a lot of people think that if they don't have that, specifically with our youth in care, because they don't always have the documentation they need. So that is good to know. So Tanya, regarding some ETV questions, if you're still available to us.
Hello.
What if I am choosing to go out of state? Can I take my ETV out of state with me?
Absolutely. So we talked a lot about how great our state is. However, we have students that are all over our country. We have students in Florida and Texas and Massachusetts, all attending school. So the biggest thing that we look at is it just has to be a nationally accredited institution. So absolutely.
All right. And what if I choose to take maybe a semester off and come back later to apply?
Yep. So we actually get that question a lot. So oftentimes students might need to take a semester off, something came up. As long as they meet the eligibility criteria of not dropping more than one class during that awarded semester and having a 2.0 GPA, they can come back when they re-enroll and pick right back up where they left off and receive funding for that upcoming semester.
And I know you had mentioned receipts. Now, what if I take that semester off and then I come back and I will have to, what will I need to provide? I received one a year ago. I took some time off coming back. Will I need receipts?
Yeah, so that obviously, as you can imagine, students would lose something like receipts. So what we tell students is they can use current ETV eligible receipts. So say, they were awarded a year ago and then they came back. They're never going to be eligible again until they can provide receipts of ETV eligible expenses, showing how they utilize that funding. So what they can do is start saving their current receipts. So if they're paying something like rent or phone bills up to $100 a month, or daily living expenses and school supplies, just saving those current receipts. So any receipts from the time they were awarded to the time they reapply are okay.
All right. Well, thank you. And I do have up on here your contact information as well as Charles for those, the ETV, TIP, and Fostering Futures. And I do know from experience that they are great to work with. So as you have questions on any of those programs, reach out to them because they are always more than happy to help and navigate that for you. So I have a few questions then for Carrie from Fostering Success Michigan to finish us out. So you talked a little bit about COVID and kind of the situation we find ourselves in, and with specifically the K-12, a lot of systems are going either virtually completely or hybrid. So what do you think is the best way to support our youth who are in foster care, who are in high school, in that junior, senior, or younger than in foster care or in high school, that may be attending maybe all virtually?
Yes. So again, checking in with them to make sure that they have the technology pieces that they're needing. And then also keeping in mind that they also might need that support, in connection. So they might just need a phone call to check in with them. I have one student who talked a lot about how when she was in foster care in high school, school was an escape for her. And so, it was like, she had a difficult time at the foster home, but when she went to school, it was her opportunity to relax and kind of become who she needed to be and do things that she enjoyed. And I've actually had conversations with her about, okay, so, if the pandemic had occurred, what would be the best ways that teachers could support you? And it really is like reaching out, checking in, finding out what's going on in the home, finding out how is school going? Do you feel connected? And really just having conversations with these students and checking in with them.
Well, you make a really good point too, because we do so much work on advocating for our young people to stay in their school of origin when they come into care, when they move, for all K-12, not just our older youth, because of the reason you said. Like, that is where they do go, where we've removed them from their home, we've taken their parents and their siblings and their communities and their neighbors, and all of that. The one thing that maybe we can keep steady for them is going to see their favorite teachers and their best friends and eating lunch and recess and all that. And in a situation, they're not seeing that either. So, I mean, I think as adults, we're having issues with that. And so our kids that kind of already have a whirlwind of things happening, that is a very good point. And one other question for you before you go. What would you say is the best way to help students get connected to the colleges who offer the supports that you mentioned?
Right. So I would talk to the student about kind of what their hopes and dreams are, what they're interested in. I love the point that you made about, you know, any kind of post-secondary education. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be college. But then find out who the exact point of contact is, or if that particular institution or college or organization has a point of contact, and then connecting the student directly with that contact. Because a lot of times students don't even know that these programs exist. For example, I know of one student who is graduated during the pandemic and is starting at EMU, and had reached out to me to ask me questions about her Fostering Future scholarship. And I tied her into an email with both Charles and the coach at EMU, and she didn't even know that there was a campus support program, right? And so thinking about that student who's trying to transition out of a COVID or a pandemic high school, right? And then transition into this college atmosphere, it was like, you know, she really needed that warm handoff, and that relationship, and then continuing that communication, especially for those students who are newly transitioning. I mean, it's, you know, this is just such a weird world that we're living in, and we all need those connections, especially our young people who may have supportive networks that are not fully developed.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. And so those are all the questions I have for everybody today. Again, I know we gave you a ton of information. I would like to thank Carrie Ward, Tanya Mackey, and Charles Rozier for being with us today and sharing their expertise. I think we would also like to thank Kathleen Haney and MDE for inviting us and allowing us to share this information, these important resources for this population of young people that really need our support, especially right now. And again, reach out to any or all of us if you have questions about services, policies, resources, any of it. We are all here to hopefully answer your questions. And thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone.